Alright, everyone. It is Thanksgiving 2024, and since I don't give a flying fuck about Thanksgiving but have the day off, I thought I'd go on and do a whack-a-Hovind. Now, I'm still recovering from being sick, so I'm still not at 100%. I have gone back to work this week, so that's a plus. It's still been kind of rough. I'm still coughing a bit, but mostly feeling better. But, yeah, I thought I'd go on and do this because why the heck not? It's a perfect opportunity. I did want to say before I get going into the video proper that I've had a couple of recent comments. Like it seems like another surge of Hovindites coming to me. I feel like it's always a targeted thing too, because it always happens in waves. Like somebody at DAL possibly can themselves say, "Hey, go comment on this guy's stuff." The people are being like, "Oh, you're too mean to Kent," or "Are you why do you do this?" Or one guy called me a stalker, and it's like, yeah, I'm not the one going around finding every single video that all these people do and dedicating whole religious sermons to them. I'm not the one asking Emma Thorne about her fucking sex life. I'm not the one who goes out of his way to hunt for information on YouTubers. Recall when AJ's Wikitubia profile, written up by who the hell ever, had his height put in wrong, and Kent thought he was like 5'1" when it's like 5'11" or something, and I don't think that's even accurate. Shit like that. I'm like, I'm not going out of my way. Kent is a public figure. He puts himself out there, and he wants people to see his content. So he would even say, "Hey, thanks for sharing my content," because lots of people would never subject themselves to a Kent Hovind video without my commentary, AJ's commentary, Grayson's commentary, Professor Dave, anybody, without someone else providing, some actual entertainment value to what is otherwise pretty poor quality content on a whole. Kent is not entertaining. He's not really interesting unless you care about following the absolute lolcow he is. And as far as treating him with respect, he doesn't treat others with respect. His interoculars, he does not give any, base respect to them. He insults people as a rule, not on a conditional basis. He insults ideas as a rule. So I'll play the same game because that's what he deserves. Kent Hovind is a horrible person. Period. In addition to that, he is outright wrong about what he says. And he harks on this so much because it's a core tenet of the effective cult that he has formed. That's been a recent discussion topic on, is Dinosaur Adventureland a cult? Yeah, I'd say it is. And the way Kent preaches, he spends more time, and I'm glad people are bringing this up finally, he spends more time, even in normal sermons, complaining about evolution than he does actually just talking about the Bible and just telling the stories. He always has to work it into either his anti-evolution stance and all the conspiracies and it's Nazis and it's for abortion, or he has to turn it into some sort of personal drama and make that sometimes an entire sermon just personal drama. Doesn't need to be anything in a church setting, but he has to make it because he's the object of worship in this. It's all about Kent. That being said, I didn't plan for that to be as big a ramble as it was. It just kind of came out. Let's get to watching this. This is on carbon dating. Neil deGrasse Tyson, because apparently me decided he'd target Tyson, but apparently inside of this conspiracy red box, a rocket atheist. All atheists who believe in carbon dating, starting with Neil deGrasse Tyson. I bet he won't let Neil get 3 minutes in, but let's just play and see what happens.
Good evening, folks. Kent Hovind here and the crew at Dinosaur Adventureland in lovely Lenox, Alabama. It is November 28th, 2024. Tonight, whack an atheist. All the atheists who believe in carbon dating. We're going to focus on carbon dating tonight.
Okay, let's make sure you focus on carbon dating, because the moment you get out of scope of carbon-14 radiometric dating and start getting into other radioisotope dating methods, you've broken your own rule for this, for lack of a better phrase.
Starting with Neil deGrasse Tyson. So here we are. Oh, let's get my mouse over here. There we go. Neil deGrasse Tyson, sorry, bud.
And, you know, why do we need to see your schedule every day? That's another little thing. It's like, does he think this makes him appear more productive than he is? That he's, you know, super busy. Here's my schedule. Here's all the stuff I'm doing. You know, It's like, you're not impressing anybody. Let me put up my schedule. Let me put up my work schedule. Let me combine it with the side projects I work on. Let me itemize it, because you've got just one thing each day on here. I got a lot more than one thing a day going on, and I'm sure everyone watching this and everyone else who makes video content on you definitely does more than one thing a day. But your little itinerary here, it's so important that you got to show it all the time. Yeah, just saying.
You get whacked tonight. Carbon dating doesn't work. I'll show you, okay? The next 3 days, we have Thanksgiving here every day. Come down, visit us. We've got a bunch of visitors, that people coming from all over. Well, Missouri? From Missouri. And you're from? South Carolina. North Carolina. And the other family from Texas. And come on, visit Dinosaur Adventureland. It's free. Tonight, Whack an Atheist Wednesday is where it's a fun game we play every Wednesday here at DAL. It's based on the whack-a-mole game. When the atheist sticks their head up, you whack them back down. Tonight, it's Neil deGrasse Tyson. Whack-a-mole game, the object is wait till he sticks his head up and whack him back down. See how fun it is and how fast you can do it, all right? Whack them back down. Children learn to play, adults love it too. With an atheist, we wait for them to say something dumb that's not true or make up a silly story, and we whack them back down. Some learn to keep...
And with Whack-a-Hovind, we wait for Ken Hovind to open his fucking mouth, because invariably he's going to say something stupid, come up with a stupid story, lie, or just be a jerk-ass. So that's why we do it, because we got to whack Hovind constantly, because he's a piece of shit. Hovind.
Keep their head down. Some don't. I taught high school 15 years. I'm used to having to correct the same kid 14 times, you know. Okay, so.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. I'm sure you are. Why? Because the kid's smarter than you.
I enjoy it. Tonight, so many atheists, so little time. Who gets whacked? The winner is Neil deGrasse Tyson. He said, some claim evolution is just a theory, as if it were merely an opinion. The theory of evolution, like the theory of gravity, is a scientific fact. Neil, you are crazy. It is not.
No, it's absolutely right. Once again, from the guy who thinks he's such a big scientist, thinks he knows so much, Kent doesn't understand what theory means in scientific context. But, you know, this isn't even about the subject he talks about. This is just, he looks for whatever chance he has to run his script. I mean, that's all Hovind does. And honestly, this would be boring if it wasn't for the fact that, especially as age catches up with him and his bitterness continues to grow, that he starts slipping up and saying more things or betraying more ideas that are just like, wow, that's repugnant, or wow, that's pretty damn crazy. You do this, you know, it's 99 out of 100 that there's nothing special, it's just him saying his same shit, but that one bit you get where it's something awesome. You know, chef's kiss emoji, that's, you know, just perfect right there. Like his little flub of, it's not evidence of a common designer. Love that I caught that.
Not any such thing, okay? Gravity is. Evolution is not part of it. Nothing similar to gravity. Evolution really happened. No, it didn't. Depends what you mean by the word. According to accepting our kinship with all life on Earth. Oh, so you're related to a mosquito. Is that what you're saying? It's not only solid science. It's baloney, Neil. In my view, it's a soaring spiritual experience. Oh, you like being...
Let's note that I let Kent speak more than he let this quote be read without interjecting. He couldn't have just read the quote and then surmised his points after the fact. Just saying.
Related to potatoes and mosquitoes. Okay. So he did a short video clip about carbon dating. That's all I'm going to be able to play tonight. Let me get this one here, right there. And go over here. Is that the right one?
So, with the...
I've been doing this for like 8 years, and I still have not a fucking clue how a video player on a goddamn computer works, because I'm Ken Hovind, and I'm a fucking dumbass.
The radioactive dating, which we use for many different elements. Carbon is good, carbon-14, we've all heard about that, is good for periods of time that go back thousands, tens of thousands of years, basically into the Ice Age. We can carbon date, you know, frozen cavemen and mastodons coming out of glaciers. Then we have other elements used that are radioactive and they decay.
Oh, that audio quality. Oh, that Audio quality. I mean, I've got a bit of background noise from a fan running because I like the air to circulate in the room. This isn't a top tier microphone, so it's going to be of adequate quality, but Kent's audio is going to be good in my video, if at most a little low volume. Kent's playing of other people's videos is atrocious, and at least now they're trying to do direct audio feed instead of us pulling the audio from the speakers, but my fucking god, how hard is it to just mix this stuff properly? It can't possibly be that difficult, unless... I don't think I forgot the dude's name, but the tech guy, I don't think he's incompetent. I think it's honestly due to how Kent wants things done and has to have things done, that it creates a problem that is tougher to work around than it would be to just replace the solution altogether. Change the flow completely, but Kent refuses to change the aspect that's causing this. That's just my take, though.
Lead is used to date the age of the Earth. That has a half-life of billions, I forgot the exact, billion plus years. Whereas carbon-14 is in the thousands of years. So you pick the one that suits the time interval you're interested in, and then you can date those. That's how we date meteorites, for example. Yeah. The people who are in denial of this, simply, it exhibits a failure in their educational system. That's what it
is. Implying Kent was educated.
Validity to it.
Of course not.
So if you deny carbon dating, it's a failure of the educational system. So everybody has to come out believing like you do, or else they're stupid.
No, Kent. What Neil is saying is that if properly taught, you will understand the nuances of the methodologies, understand how and why they work, and will accept them because they've met criteria that any reasonably educated, reasonably scientifically minded person will accept. You have an immediate bias to reject this because it rejects your particular interpretation of one particular book that a bunch of weirdos say is the magical word of some assumed deity. And because of some weird math of adding up some fucking dates and ages of people, you've decided that the world's 6,000 years old and that the magical beginnings of your fairy tale happened around that time. All just massive assumptions, massive presumptions. Versus what can actually be studied. Radiation is real. Your God isn't. Get the fuck over it.
That would be my summary. Did I get that at the end of the carbon clip? Let me see.
Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So,
Okay, yeah. All right. Let me go back to where I want to be here on this one.
I'd like to note that Tyson did bring up more than just carbon dating, so we'll see if Kent sticks with carbon dating. I've got my phone handy. It's not got much of a charge because the damn thing didn't charge overnight, but I'll try to pull up some info as I can. Let's see.
Carbon dating. There. Carbon dating. This is in my slides. What about carbon dating? The main crutch evolutionists lean on is time. You have to have billions of years to turn your frog to a prince, okay?
No. The time is a known given based on all of this evidence up to and including radiometric dating. It's like, everything seems to be pretty damned old. When you compound that with life being pretty damn old, further than your 6,000 years, everything nests together nicely. It's not, we gotta believe evolution, so we gotta make up time. It's, world seems to be really freaking old, like really long spans of time. Like, wow, we never thought it could be this old. And hey, it takes a while for mutations to add up, and we see evidence of this. It's kind of adding together. Lots of time in the layers, things going back, being more simple than current forms. Maybe this stuff has adapted over time. Maybe things have changed over this obviously long time span. Not what you're trying to say it is. Once again, as I always stress with Kent, there's nuance to everything, but you've got to try to make things seem absurd because that's your entire MO. Mr. Dirtman Ribwoman. Right.
To fool the students into believing the Earth is billions of years old, they hide behind these different dating techniques. Now, carbon dating only goes back a few thousand. But the other one, potassium, argon, uranium, lead, all those, they go back billions of years, is what they say. We're going to deal primarily with carbon dating tonight and show you how it just doesn't work. C14 dating is the main prop to hold up the stupid religion of evolution. Here's the periodic table of the elements. Carbon is number 6. Nitrogen is number 7 on the periodic table. Carbon has an atomic mass of 12. Okay, so they call it carbon 12. There are like 14 different isotopes of carbon. There's carbon 8, carbon 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
Let's note that Kent didn't explain what an isotope is here. Unless you already have that knowledge, you automatically are completely lost on this. And yet, Kent claims to have been a teacher. Any good teacher would have, right there, explained. Now, what are these isotopes? Why, they're varying atomic masses. Might have an extra neutron, what have you, because the proton determines the element. You get some extra neutrons in there. Usually elements tend to be unstable unless they reach a happy medium, which is usually the most common isotope, like in this case carbon-12. So you get carbon-14, here's the problem. Or you get things like nitrogen getting hit by cosmic rays, gaining a proton, oh snap, or losing a proton if you have an incident, becomes a new element, heavier or lower. This is basic fission-fusion kind of affair. Sorry, I'm not explaining it well. I'm running super off the cuff, But y'all know what I mean. The fact remains, he didn't even attempt to explain what an isotope is.
Carbon. How does radiocarbon form? Cosmic rays from outer space continually bombard the upper atmosphere, producing fast-moving neutrons, subatomic particles carrying no electric charge. These fast-moving neutrons collide with atoms of nitrogen, the most abundant element in the upper atmosphere. So nitrogen is right next to carbon. Let's see C and N there, okay?
Well, nitrogen is the most abundant element in the atmosphere. Most of the air is neutral nitrogen, a large quantity of oxygen, carbon dioxide, and then your trace elements, your noble gases, all that jazz.
These they collide with nitrogen, the abundant and the upper atmosphere, converting them to radiocarbon. So instead of nitrogen 14, it's now carbon 14, counting the number of neutrons and protons and electrons and all that stuff. Okay. Earth's atmosphere is about 300 miles thick. Most of it's within 10 miles.
But in your Science Center video, you said the atmosphere is 50 miles thick. Which is it, Kent?
So the radiation from the sun is striking our atmosphere, changing nitrogen into carbon-14. That's where it comes from. It comes from the sunlight.
Have you seen that happen, Kent? Where's the evidence of that? But you believe it. You just believe that happens. And yes, I'm being facetious, because I'm going to have to qualify that to somebody. Obviously, I accept the formation of carbon-14 in the atmosphere and those types of particle interactions. But I'm pointing out the special pleading, the nature of the way Kent argues with stuff, that, he just accepts that without any question. But the moment it starts to contradict his fairy tale, then he starts throwing an issue with it. And will bring up those same objections of, you don't know that. Kent, you don't know that carbon-14 gets produced in the atmosphere via neutron bombardment from solar radiation. You don't know that. You sure accept it, though. It's funny that you do that, but not other things.
Striking our atmosphere. Most of Earth's atmosphere is within about 10 miles. Earth's atmosphere is 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, 0.06% carbon dioxide, and that's what the trees have to live off of. 0.06%. 0.000000765% radioactive carbon-14. See, the radioactive carbon attaches to oxygen, just like other carbon does, and it makes carbon dioxide, and that's what the plants are breathing. We breathe in the air and give off carbon dioxide. Plants breathe in the air and give off oxygen, but they use up the carbon dioxide. Okay. So
that's a terrible explanation of that, Kent. No, they use the carbon in the forming of the standard hydrocarbon bonds that pretty much make up all of life. The extra oxygen leftovers from that process get discarded, and then we breathe that in because we need the oxygen for our type of metabolism. Very well understood process.
Carbon dioxide, some of it radioactive, not much, a little tiny bit. It combines with all the rest of the carbon dioxide by wind currents. Radiation from the sun strikes the atmosphere, produces radioactive carbon-14.
I just want to point out this shows Kent's age that he did a hyphenation on radioactive, which is the way they would do it back in the 50s and 60s. That fell out of favor and compounding the word instead of a hyphenated word to just be radioactive. Just again, little things you notice, and if you know what you're looking for, it's a bit of a tell. Again, I have peculiarities in the way I will spell some words, write out some phrasings, etc. So I'm not criticizing him for it per se. It's just something I noticed and thought I'd point out right now. Just interesting quirks.
Combines with oxygen to make radioactive carbon dioxide, CO2. So most of the CO2 is not radioactive. Radioactive means, you see the movies where they hold a Geiger counter next to it and go click, 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 click. Ah, radioactive, okay? All right.
Radioactive means you see the movies and they hold a Geiger counter to it and it goes click, 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 click. You're the worst goddamn teacher I've ever encountered in my entire life. Radioactive means that atoms in the material that you're handling, whatever it may be, are unstable at the nucleus level. And they will emit alpha, beta, gamma particles, basically helium nuclei, raw electrons, or neutrons, as they try to reach an equilibrium, reach the lowest energy state. Those particles contain some pretty nice energy and will cause effects on other things. Get radiation exposed to skin, cellular damage, molecules thrown out of whack in your DNA. The analogy in Chernobyl, HBO's Chernobyl, was kind of where he describes radiation as, thousands upon thousands of tiny bullets. And it goes into detail on it. You can think of it kind of like that at higher energy levels. Lower level radiation, paper will block it, your skin will block it, it's fine. But what I'm getting at is, I did a better job explaining it just off the cuff, with me not even feeling very well, than you did in what should be an educational moment. You are a shitty teacher, Kent.
Willard Libby, 1955, was featured in Time magazine. He's the one that really invented carbon dating back in the late 40s and early 50s. Neutrons collide with atmospheric nitrogen atoms. The carbon-14 process. Cosmic rays bombard nitrogen in the upper atmosphere, and they knock.
Let's note that at this stage, Kent is just repeating himself and adding in a tiny new fact each time to make things seem make himself seem more educated in the subject and more knowledgeable. It's this kind of weird rote repetition that authority figures will do of information that is like baseline to ensure that people get so bored, so desensitized to the information that they just go with it to move forward. It's like a volume of, printing the same if you printed, the same page of a book 1,000 times and handed it to somebody and they just looked at the book, it's like, oh yeah, this is kind of a thick book. But it's all the same thing over and over. Doesn't change the fact it's a thick book, doesn't change the fact that Kent seems to be going on for a while about this subject, but he's just repeating himself. So the actual volume of valuable information given is tiny compared to how much he's speaking.
Knock a proton out of the nitrogen nucleus, forming carbon-14. This combines with oxygen to make carbon dioxide. Okay? No argument yet out of me.
But have you seen it happen, Kent? Have you done it in a lab? Huh? Have you? It's just something you believe. You've never seen it. You don't know that.
Cosmic radiation converts 21 pounds of nitrogen into carbon-14 every year. This is over the whole world. And it's not only from the sun, it's from the stars. Radiation coming from the sun and the stars is making C14 in our atmosphere.
Kent, the volume of radiation coming from the sun, which is a star, it's the nearest star, is exponentially greater than anything from anything else out there. It's all from the sun, baby.
No argument out of me. Sunspot cycle. Based on the research, there is evidence suggesting the solar sunspot cycle. Do you know the sun goes through periods of time where it gets a bunch of zits and then they disappear? Solar sun.
Wow, what a terrible explanation for the sunspot cycle. An 11-year cycle where interesting electromagnetic phenomena cause an increase in sunspots, which are cooler, if memory serves, cooler areas of the sun's photosphere. The physics up there is pretty crazy given the extremely high energy of the system. And yeah, it cycles, 11 every 11 years or so. You go for higher activity, lower activity. It's pretty cool stuff.
Spots. I think it's about every 11 years on average. Well, that affects the rate of carbon-14 decay, carbon-14 formation here on Earth.
Yeah, because during sunspot periods, during high solar activity periods, there's higher solar radiation emissions. That's how that works.
The sunspot cycle modulates the galactic cosmic ray flux, which is responsible for producing carbon-14 in the Earth's atmosphere. During periods of low sunspot activity, the solar wind is weaker, allowing more cosmic rays to penetrate the Earth's magnetic field and interact with atmosphere nuclei, leading to increased C14. So wait. If you're going to carbon date something, wouldn't you have to know how much was in it when it died? What if it happened to die at a period when there's less C14 being formed? See, this is one of the objections I'm going to get to in a minute. You don't know how much was in the object when it died. You know how much is in the atmosphere today. Might not be the same tomorrow, because the sunspot cycle affects it. Okay, let's see. The Maunder minimum. Let's see. A period of extremely...
To read from Wikipedia on that, in the section regarding, let's see, there's a lot here, that Kent will never read. Sample is assumed to have originally had the same C12-C14 ratio as the ratio in the atmosphere, and the size of the sample is known. The total number of atoms in the sample can be calculated. Currently sample. Half-life of radioactive isotope is a more familiar concept than the mean life. So although the equations above express terms of mean life, it's more useful to quote God, there is so much to the carbon-14 article. Above calculations make several assumptions, such as the level of C14 in the atmosphere has remained constant over time. In fact, level of C14 in the atmosphere has varied significantly, and as a result, the values provided by the equation above have to be corrected using data from other sources. This is done by calibration curves, which convert a measurement of C14 in a sample into an estimated calendar age. The calculations involve several steps and include an intermediate value called the radiocarbon age, which is the age in radiocarbon years of the sample. An age quoted in radiocarbon years means that no calibration curve has been used. The calculations for radiocarbon years assume that the atmospheric C14, C12 has not changed over time. So, again, the scientists have an understanding of this. Oh, God, it just goes on. See, that right there, that to do the necessary research into this subject, I would have to stop this video and focus on multiple paragraphs of details to hopefully be able to come up with a summary that adequately explains it for the purposes of this video, shows how nuanced, how in-depth these processes are. And Kent just hand waves them away. That when he's like, oh, well, how do you know? It's like, well, it's explained in detail in even cursory Wikipedia articles, let alone the more detailed scientific papers and the methodologies on this, stuff that he refuses to go into and he knows that his followers will not go into.
Low sunspot activity associated with significant increase in C14. This is because reduced solar wind allows more cosmic rays to reach Earth's atmosphere, resulting in higher carbon-14. Ah, okay. The formation of C14 can be affected by the sun and even the stars. Earth's magnetic field can affect the formation of carbon-14. Earth's magnetic field does have an impact on the production rate of carbon-14 according to the snippets. Let's see. Production rate vary because of changes in the cosmic ray flux caused by the heliospheric modulation, the solar wind, and solar magnetic field, and of great significance due to variations in Earth's magnetic field. Geomagnetic field variations can also affect the production rate of C14. as changes in Earth's magnetic field can modulate the cosmic ray flux. So,
translation of all that. The amount of radiation coming from solar sources varies. Earth's magnetic field varies. You compare the two, you get a value that's, just a hypothetical. You compare the two, you get a value that would be how much cosmic radiation's hitting Earth and generating how much carbon-14 over any given period. That's my takeaway from it. It varies. We get it.
Cosmic rays from the sun hit our atmosphere and change some of the nitrogen into radioactive carbon-14. Most of them latch onto oxygen atoms and become carbon dioxide. Okay? Plants absorb CO2 and make it part of their tissues. Animals eat the plants and get it into their tissues. Some of the C14 some of the carbon dioxide is radioactive and is unstable. It does not like being C14. Immediately begins to decay back to nitrogen, which is a gas, and escapes. It decays. Based on many tests, it takes 5,730 years for half of the C14 to decay. So if I gave you a pile of C14, you wait 5,700 years, half of it would be gone. You wait another 5,730 years, half of the half would be gone.
So I found a more cursory explanation of the whole radiation curve factor. Calibration curve factor. Ugh. The Kent Hovind effect, where you grow dumber for every second you listen to him, right? To build a calibration curve, which I mentioned earlier, is a very time-consuming process. It takes thousands of radiocarbon dates and other specialists that do dendrochronology. So tree ring counting. It's built up over time by those radiocarbon labs that have access to suitable material and also funding to be able to build a calibration curve. And the way those are done is you get something really old, like a Cowrie tree. I think this primarily focuses on specifically tree dating. Every year a tree put a new growth ring, and we carbon date those rings and see how the C14 content varies as we count back in time. And what scientists found was that there were these things called wiggles. That's points where C14 production is higher or lower rather than a steady state like physics predicted. So instead of having a straight diagonal line from today back to the past, as you'd normally expect if production equals the decay of C14, you end up with this very wiggly line that deviates off. So at this point in time, we have 3 calibration curves: north atmospheric, south atmospheric, built from tree rings, and marine calibration curves. And this is I just read in the middle of the paper, of the website, I should say, the page, and that's once again shows that to understand these things fully, you would need to go through the entire document. And what Kent has done here, what Kent always does, is that he's already touted himself as some kind of professional that one should listen to. And therefore, if he gives these cursory summaries of things, distorted or not from reality and factuality, it still creates the illusion that he knows what he's talking about, and the information he's saying must be all that is really matters in this, all that is of value, and that's simply not the case, as he's omitting details that address these very criticisms. Because a cursory search and a little bit of reading, more than, a few paragraphs. I know the world is scared of paragraphs, but, they exist for a reason. You put enough of them together and you have a complex idea, you might understand something. You might learn this subject. But Kent doesn't want you to do that.
So it'd go from a half to a fourth to an eighth to a 16th to not much. Okay? They say the oldest you can date is probably 50 or 60,000 years. People argue about that. We'll throw it all out in a minute. Tree rings provide snapshots of Earth's past climate. Really. They drill into a tree X number of rings, and they say, oh, this ring is, 500 years old. Let's test the wood in that sample.
Yeah, because if we know a tree was, like if we have a known cut down date for a tree, let's say, you chop this fucker down and it's got 500 fucking rings in it, probably 500 years. Now, yes, depending on species, it may vary. Some species it doesn't, ring per year kind of thing. Regardless, it averages out, and we're talking within a general range, a general time period here, not some exact number for the most part. Because all we need to do is be close enough, and if we notice patterns in rings, hey, we can start figuring out, well, when this tree was felled, it was, probably 10 years ago because these rings match here, and this pattern matches, but it clearly stopped growing at this point, whereas this tree we just cut down continued. Hey, we have a pattern here, and oh, look, this was a way older tree when it fell, so we can go even further back, and it goes on like that.
Carbon-14. Researchers dated the remains and clothing of a hunter found in frozen ice in the Alps, known as the Ötzi Iceman, to determine he died approximately 5,300 years ago. His shoes, which are above, were made of leather, grass, and twine. Pretty cool pair of shoes, huh? You know, wear them to the mall, show off to your friends. How did they...
Kent, nobody goes to malls anymore. Malls are on a massive decline. Just, dude, get with the times. No matter what, you're at most 25 years out of date. And this coming from the guy with a typewriter collection who's got a rotary phone on his desk. But, I'm a hobbyist. You're just a crazy cult leader.
do it? Well, because it contains leather and grass and twine made of organic material, was once alive, and carbon dated. What are the...
Hey, Kent, organic doesn't mean was once alive. Just, little nuance there. I'll leave you to look up what organic actually means.
Limitations of carbon dating, University of Chicago. Various dating techniques have limitations. All of them do. Each works best for different types of problems. Radiocarbon dating works on organic material up to about 60,000 years of age. Radiocarbon samples are also easily contaminated. So to provide accurate dates, they must be clean and well preserved.
No, it's a stress that obviously, yes, the materials that stuff would have been made from are made from once living materials or substances created from something living. But that being said, an implication with organic is also relating to living material. Organic compounds that are not necessarily alive, but contain those primarily same elements, same molecular structures.
And how do you know it's been well preserved for 60,000 years? Who watched it? We'll get into that in a minute.
See, there he goes. Like, who watched it out there for 60,000 years? Even though this paper probably explains exactly why they say it was 60,000 years old. But he totally accepts the cosmic radiation thing. He doesn't have an argument with that because that doesn't violate his magic fairy tale.
Dirt and other matter must be washed off with water, but chemical treatments and other cleaning procedures are also often needed. This is because there are so few atoms to count. Even a little extra carbon from contamination will throw off the results significantly. A million-year-old sample contaminated by only a tiny amount of carbon could yield an invalid age of 40,000.
But you don't date million-year-old samples via carbon dating. It was explained that it's like 50, 60,000 years. That's like 1/20th the time span you're thinking of, bruh. Come on.
So it could be, actually it's a million, but they're showing them as 40,000. And give some examples here. Tree Ring Detective, Oceanic Service here, Britannica. There's all kinds of stuff on the internet about carbon dating, if you want to read up on it. A method of age determination depends upon the decay of nitrogen, of radiocarbon. Carbon-14 is continually formed in nature by the interaction of the solar sun and our nitrogen. Okay.
By the interaction of our solar sun and our nitrogen. Yes, Kent, our solar sun. Is that like our lunar moon? And our Terran Earth? Now I want to play StarCraft. Fun fact, the Yamato part of my online alias is a StarCraft reference to the Yamato canon in the StarCraft game series. I'm not kidding, that's actually what it's a reference to.
Half-Life, Chemteam. Another wood sample.
I've never played Half-Life. I know. Shocker, right? I have never played Half-Life 1, Half-Life 2, or anything else related. I've played other Valve games, played a bit of Team Fortress, loved me some Left 4 Dead 2. Never played Half-Life. Never played Gary's Mod either. It's weird the stuff I haven't done. Especially given that knowing that, I could play Half-Life right now, but instead, I'm watching a Kent Hovind video. I have made some terrible decisions in my life. But that's okay. I'll make up for it with more Guild Wars as a reward to myself when I'm done with this.
Prepared for an object recovered at an archaeological excavation gives a decay rate of 0.109 disintegration per second per gram. What's the age? That's a problem I'm supposed to figure out the students are if they take this class. All right. What is carbon dating? Carbon dating elegantly merged chemistry and physics to develop a scientific method that can accurately determine the age of organic material as old as 60,000 years.
And you notice he's still just explaining what carbon dating is, quite literally in this case. We're 12 minutes into the video, Kent. Get to your points. You're just waffling around because you love to hear your own voice.
It's based on the fact that living organisms like trees, plants, people, and animals absorb C14 into their tissue. When they die, C14 starts to change into other atoms over time. Technically, it starts to change as soon as you get it. It can be changing while it's in you. You don't have to wait till you die, but that's okay. Scientists can estimate how long the organism...
You're constantly consuming material, though, so you'll be ingesting additional levels of carbon-14. Additional amounts, matching with the environment at the time of you being alive. So the timer starts ticking once you die, because once you're dead, you're no longer ingesting material. You're no longer eating, breathing. So there's no additional carbon-14 being entered into the body. And so then the decay rate begins to matter. And from that point, measurements can happen. This is the reason why you don't carbon date things that are alive, because for one, you don't have enough time to actually have decays happen to be able to get a value. Hence the 5,300 a year, upper limit. But additionally, you've got stuff constantly being ingested, so even if it did decay in any appreciable amount, it'd just be replenished. So, it's funny if you pay attention to your own slides, you'll see the contradictions here. It's incredible that you contradict yourself in your own slides this often.
The organism has been dead by counting the remaining carbon-14 atoms. The technique was developed in the late 40s at University of Chicago by chemistry professor Willard Libby, who later got a Nobel Prize. Let's see. Carbon dating has helped us to reveal how our bodies work, understand the climate of the Earth, and reconstruct its history, and to track the sun's activity and Earth's magnetic field. So those both affect the carbon-14 formation rate. Radiocarbon dating is instrumental in the discovery of human-caused climate change. Oh yeah, blame the humans, okay? Scientists use it to track the sources of carbon in the atmosphere. Let's see.
It's kind of hilarious to me, people who deny climate change are always the ones who believe every other crazy-ass conspiracy out there, but they won't even consider that being something. And I guess maybe because it's an actual fact, and usually with conspiracy theories, they're all a big load of bullshit. So I guess one of the requirements to be a conspiracy theorist is what you believe also has to be a load of crap, except in those cases where they aren't, but those are, while well-publicized, few and far between versus the number of conspiracy theories out there. Regardless, of course Kent rejects, anthropomorphic climate change, even though all evidence points towards us having a massive impact. Because, 200 years ago, there weren't factories heaving pollution into the sky. But there are now. Things get hot. Kind of makes you think, maybe these two are related. Just maybe. But that's a different discussion for a different time. I still want to point out that Kent has not accurately explained what an isotope is, what radiation is. He hasn't explained the actual material necessary to understand what is being done here. People know that there's a dating method, there's a way to find the age of things using this carbon-14, but anyone who just knows based on what he said still doesn't understand what carbon-14 actually is, doesn't understand radiation much at all, would not have been properly primed on any of the information necessary to have an actual grasp of this, to be able to visualize it, to be able to wrap their head around the concepts.
It starts with cosmic rays, subatomic particles of matter that continuously rain upon...
Wait, what did he say there?
Let's see. It starts with cosmic rays, subatomic particles of matter that continuously rain upon Earth from all...
Oh, you know what we're doing. Subatomic particles. Speed. We're going to 0.25, and let's do this.
Starts with cosmic rays, subatomic particles of matter that
Subatomic particles of matter. You know, sometimes the torture is worth it to find moments like that.
continuously rain upon Earth from all directions. Not just from the sun, oh no, all directions. When cosmic rays reach Earth's upper atmosphere,
I know earlier I said the stars are probably doing fuck all, and I still hold to that, but I'm not saying there's not going to be some material coming from out there. There is. There's plenty. I mean, we can measure it for fuck's sake, so obviously material is reaching us. But the bulk of the energy is going to be dayside polar regions, aurora borealis, located entirely in my carbon-14 generating regions. That's just the nearest source of this kind of energy to generate this stuff. But he's focusing on that when it's really kind of irrelevant. We've already established radiation from space seems to cause this effect. And when stuff ingests things, we suddenly now have a little atomic clock, so to speak, inside of everything living that we can measure. And if it falls in the right range, we can get a date to how old it is.
physical and chemical interactions form radioactive isotope carbon-14. Living organisms absorb this C14 into their tissue. Once they die, the absorption stops. They stop breathing or eating. And carbon-14 begins very slowly to change into other atoms at a predictable rate.
But Kent, how do you know that the rates have always been the same? You accept that, or are you about to say that? Did I just preempt what you're going to say? Am I getting that good at understanding the mind of Hovind?
Really, the rate never changes?
I was being totally, facetious there. I was just joking. And I nailed it. That's the thing I fucking love about Hovind's bullshit. His insanity is so strong that he seriously thinks the fundamental laws of the universe, fundamental properties of the universe, can just change and have just changed over time. That it doesn't matter. The same guy who thinks that the planet is fine-tuned for life thinks that quantities such as the speed of light, that the nuances of radioactive decay, that these values can just be changed, that C doesn't matter, that the Planck unit doesn't matter, that the explicit values, protons, neutrons, electrons, don't matter and can just be changed at God's will. Which, under the way your character's supposed to be, sure, they could be, but he acts like in the universe as we experience it, that these values can just change whenever. And that's just fine. Yet adheres to the everything is fine-tuned idea. It's wild.
By measuring how much C14 remains, a scientist can estimate how long it's been dead. Radiocarbon can be used on any object that used to be alive. That includes pieces of animals, people, and plants. But also paper that was made from reeds, leather made from animal hides, logs used for building houses, and so forth. So fossils are actually dated by the position in the geologic column, which was invented in 1830.
Yeah, and your version of the Bible was written in 1611. So fucking what?
120 years before carbon dating. This geologic column does not exist anywhere in the world except...
It does. You're full of shit. And the entire thing about the geologic column construct existing before radiometric datings were there, people gave general date ranges based on other evidence, understanding how long a particular type of strata is likely to take to form. Seeing what kind of strata are there and therefore adding it together, much the same way you guys extrapolate the ages in the Bible. Because you just take those at face value. Point is, it's well understood. They gave general ranges, and then as we started to understand, the nuances of nuclear decay a little better, and began to be able to realize, hey, we can start measuring time with these things, they started doing research and found out, hey, this stuff adds up pretty well. These guys guessed right, because, We know how long sandstone takes to form. We know how long a certain amount of sandstone would take to form, etc., etc. And that's just, again, me going off the cuff with this.
The textbooks. This guy admitted it. Radioactive dating would not have been feasible if the geologic column had not been erected first.
Yeah, because they needed something to contrast with, if that even was said in the way you're trying to put it, because, there's always context around everything that's lost when Kent and other creationists do quote mines like that. Also, the quote is from January 1976, apparently, or at least the source he got it from is. So, talking almost 50 years ago. Just saying.
American Journal of Science. Apart from, let's see, ever since William Smith at the beginning of the 19th century, fossils have been and still are the best and most accurate method of dating and correlating the rocks in which they occur.
Now, I want to note that we are well outside of the realm of carbon dating. That at this stage we're into other radiometric methods, because a thing people forget about fossils is that there is generally not much, if any, organic material left. We've had a case of permineralization to where the organic material has been replaced with rocky material, for lack of a better word, silicates, etc. So what you have is effectively a stone cast of whatever was there. It's a pretty fascinating phenomenon. Now, some organic material can survive, and of course, we hit in cases like the Mary Schweitzer soft tissue thing that creationists love to bring up, and even she herself has said, it's not what you say it is. Stop misusing my research that way. It suffices to say, though, that we're still outside of the realm of carbon dating. We're into other radiometric methods, and that, having known ages for fossils kind of skips the middleman of trying to figure out how old a rock layer is, because you're not going to find a pterosaur in material that's only 40 million years old. They were gone by then. So it's going to be at least up to the time of the last pterosaur.
Apart from very modern examples, which are actually archaeology, I can think of no cases of
I say that all as just, examples. Again, off the cuff. I feel like I have to explain myself in these regularly. I know if you're watching this far, I don't. But it's a bit of a nervous habit I have to, because it's like, gotta qualify everything lest somebody take something out of context or somebody try to claim I said this, that, the other as absolute fact when it's just analogy or just a comparison or just an off-the-cuff example, and you know how these people can be. So just appreciate you bearing with me.
Radioactive decay being used to date fossils. Well, you got carbon and nitrogen next to each other, and the nitrogen gets bombarded by radiation and turns to carbon-14. It doesn't want to be carbon-14. It starts to decay, and a Geiger counter will pick up the clicks as it falls apart. Click, click, click. Radioactive, like uranium and other elements like that. Radioactive C14 is being produced in the atmosphere by the sun and the stars. It breaks down to nitrogen at the rate of half of it every 5,730.
He's like a broken record. The moment he adds something new, he goes back and starts doing this again. It's incredible.
Years. During photosynthesis, plants breathe in CO2 and make it part of their tissue. Some of it is radioactive. Carbon dioxide plus water and in the presence of sunlight creates the photosynthesis process. Okay. Animals eat the plants and make it part of their body. How many of you have ever eaten either plants or animals that have eaten plants? Anybody ever done that before?
Uh-oh, show of hands. Kent? I apologize, but I'm going to say it. That's a fucking retarded question to ask. Because everyone has consumed plant or an animal that consumes plants, or an animal that has ate an animal that consumed plants, and so on and so on. The entire food chain, a fundamental link, is plants. That's how it works on this planet, Kent. As the stupidest show of hands that you could do out of the multitude of all of your show of hands cases in this being fucking stupid. My God, Kent. You're just making yourself look like an absolute idiot with that. And once again, proving that the most advanced grade level you taught was kindergarten.
That's probably everything you've ever eaten, right? Which means you got radiocarbon in you. You could be tested. You could be carbon dated right now.
Yes, and it would show a false date. For reasons I explained earlier. Sorry, I'm getting a bit frustrated with this asshole, and we're only halfway through the video.
All of us could. It's assumed the percent of C14 in the air today is the same in all living plants and animals. That is an assumption. If the atmosphere contains 0.0000765%, probably you do too. Why don't you have it tested? So the plants are breathing in CO2 through the stomata, and they're making it part of their tissue.
I hate that phrasing, plants don't breathe, in that sense. I said this in the Science Center video, and I'll say it again. I know it's a nitpicky thing, but I hate when people say that plants breathe. It's just not exactly accurate.
Let's see. If the atmosphere is 0.0000765%, you probably are too, but it doesn't work out that way. When the plant or animal dies, it stops taking in new C14. It stops eating and breathing, obvious. So they're comparing the amount of carbon-14 in the object they're dating with the amount currently in the atmosphere to determine how long it's been dead. If it only has half as much, it's assumed it's been dead for 5,730 years, one half-life. So if it's got half of the C14, dead 5,700 years. So it can't get any more because it's dead. So
sorry, I'm having to let them play because one, I want to try to get through this, and two, it's Broken Record City over here.
It goes out of balance compared to the atmosphere. If it is...
And look, Kent had to put fancy numbers. He used the division key on a calculator and got percentages that make it look like he has a clue what he's talking about. Yep. Real impressive there, Kent.
Giving you a reading of 0.0000765, it's freshly killed. If it gets half of that much, it's 5,700 years. 1/4 of that, 1,400 or 11,000 years. 1/8 of that, 17,000 years, and so on. Okay. So it goes from a half to a fourth to an eighth to a 16th. There should be no measurable C14 after 40 to 50,000 years. But ICR and Answers in Genesis both have great articles on their channel, on their...
Yeah, those same groups that discredit you. And they independently are also full of shit. Outright wrong and outright lying about plenty. So, why don't you look at actual science instead of ICR and other, organizations in loose quotes of such poor quality with, extreme biases. Because they're, religious groups. Young earth religious groups. Creationist groups that their whole bias is, to try to put this stuff down. Oh, but you turn it around. Oh, all the scientists want to push God out the window. It's like, no, but if your deity starts to, have a smaller and smaller box to hide in, and the rest of the universe makes a lot of sense without him, it's kind of inevitable that one would realize eventually maybe this thing just doesn't exist.
Website about diamonds, which should be impervious to carbon-14 transfer. Read their article about diamonds proving C14 is crazy. Anyway, so they make a calibration curve.
I don't know anything offhand on the whole diamond thing, but like everything, I'm sure it's explained properly somewhere else, and that someone awesome in the comments will explain the whole diamond carbon-14 thing in ways better than I could. Because, again, I'm doing this as a real-time reaction. You guys in the comments have the time to plan your responses, to do some research if you feel the urge, and to share in, a refined way, because text is awesome. It's actually, if I may go on a side thing, I really hate everything being all about video content now, and blogs and textual content really being downplayed, because there's so much more value in plain, easy to parse text that can easily be updated as well, as opposed to video work that you have to watch in reasonably real time or otherwise have to let play from beginning to end unless you know where to jump to, and can't easily be edited or appended if something needs to be corrected. So, just That's why I run a blog. Yeah, I've been focusing on videos recently, but I'm going to go back to writing more. And hopefully, I'll find a happy balance between the two, but let's keep going.
If it's getting 16 clicks per minute on your Geiger counter, it's still alive or freshly killed. If you're only getting 8 clicks per minute, 1 half-life, 4 clicks, 2 half-lives, 2 clicks, etc.
That isn't how radiation measurement explicitly works. You've way oversimplified. Also, there's more radiation detecting equipment than the, quote, Geiger counter, unquote. That's become kind of a collective, a colloquial term for just, anything that detects radiation. But you're detecting all kinds of radiation from a particular source, particular spectra. So you would need something calibrated to the emission spectrum of C14. I don't know offhand which particle it emits, alpha, beta, or gamma. But you would need something calibrated to that, and you would need to, in some capacity, isolate against other sources. So, yeah, it's more complicated than you make it out to be. Again, I'm going to throw out the word, more nuanced.
With their short 5,700-year half-life, no carbon-14 atom should exist in any carbon older than 250,000 years. Yet it has proven impossible to find any natural source of carbon below the Pleistocene strata that does not contain significant amounts of C14. Even though such strata are supposed to be millions or billions of years old. Conventional carbon-14 laboratories have been aware of this anomaly since the early 1980s and have strived to eliminate it and are unable to account for it. Lately, the world's best such laboratory, which has learned during 2 decades of low C14 measurements how to not contaminate specimens externally, under contract to Creationist, confirms such observations for coal samples, and even for a dozen diamonds, which cannot be contaminated in situ with recent carbon. These constitute very strong evidence that the Earth is only thousands, not billions of years old.
I just straight up call bullshit, as I will on any ICR article. And again, I'm sure in other sources this is explained in explicit detail.
ICR.org. It sounds good about carbon dating, but there's some obvious assumptions. If I told you I wanted you to fill a barrel with water, here's the hose. Caleb, fill that barrel with water. But I've drilled holes in the other side.
Well, that makes you an asshole, Kent.
As it gets up higher and higher, starts leaking out more and more holes. Eventually, you're going to reach a stage called equilibrium. It's leaking out as fast as you're putting it in. And you're never going to fill the barrel unless you plug the holes. The sun is adding C14 to our atmosphere, and it's leaking out at the same time. So you got a similar problem here. Earth's atmosphere equilibrium. Eventually, based on research results, there is a consensus among scientists that the Earth's atmosphere would reach equilibrium C14 after 30,000 years.
And once again, I'm sure there's more to it that you're not showing.
Okay, so the atmosphere should have reached equilibrium a long time ago, if it's millions of years old. Well, did it? It's been calculated this would take 30,000 years for the Earth's atmosphere to reach equilibrium. Then the atheists will say, well, we know the Earth is millions of years old, so we can ignore the equilibrium problem. Folks, it has not yet reached equilibrium. Radiocarbon is forming 28 to 37% faster than it's decaying. It's still not reached equilibrium. Guess what? It's less than 30,000 years old.
Didn't you also stress earlier that the reproduction values vary? Also, this is a book or a publication from 1985, and if I remember correctly, that is one of the higher solar activity years. Also the year I was born. If my memory of that is correct, that the period around the mid-80s was a higher production rate or higher solar activity rates, that would imply that there is more carbon-14 being formed. But then there's also the implication of if the rates can, how much can the production rates vary? Could a period of low solar activity result in higher decay rates to a point where we would see a decrease in radiocarbon, to where possibly these values could be reversed? Radiocarbon is decaying, or is decaying. are decreasing 28 to 37% faster than it's forming. You know, you just extrapolate this stuff out of wherever it is. You take it out of its context, and it's just like, well, here you go. I mean, it's just, and this is me doing this cursory, doing this off the cuff, real time, while sick, finding flaws in what you're saying, finding these problems where deceit is the name of the game, where intentionally lying, in all effect, just intentionally being deceptive, lying, is key. I'm going to look that up real quick, period of solar activity.
They don't want that, do they? Fluctuations in the rate of C14 production. At times, the production rate will exceed the decay rate. Other times, the decay rate will be the larger. Well, then how are you going to date anything with a rubber ruler like this?
Oh, yeah, see, there he goes. He just covered his own self, but he wants to argue rubber ruler when it's not. It's all understood and compensated for. Again, stuff I read excerpts from earlier begin to go into nice explanations of this stuff. And if I can remember to, I might read up in detail on those, because some pretty interesting shit. I find all of this stuff interesting, but I only have so much time and energy to devote to getting, into an obsession on any given topic. And sadly, radiocarbon dating has not become a subject of heavy interest. Now, nuclear power production? Maybe the history of the RBMK reactor? Now that, I've deep dived into. But that doesn't play a role here, so sadly I can't use that information.
The amount of C14 in the atmosphere has always been the same. That's an assumption they make, and it's not true. Robert, Archie.org has did have, I don't know if he's still good or not. I haven't talked to him in years, but he said he got good information showing it's still not in equilibrium. Here's the illustration I use all the time. If I walked into a room and found a candle burning on a table, we walk in, we see the candle burning, and I ask you the question, when was it lit? I don't know. Well, let's do some empirical science, something we can.
Okay, back on the subject of 1985, that was actually a low solar activity period. Given that the publication, however, was from 85, it could be implication that it was an older document. In whatever case, it doesn't change that Kent's very assertion is intrinsically wrong. And now he's going to do his candle analogy, and it's like, this doesn't work.
Measure, test, demonstrate. Let's measure it. We find out the candle is 7 inches tall. Nobody's going to argue. It's 7 inches tall. Let's watch how fast it burns. We watch it for a while and time it. We find out, wow, it's burning an inch an hour. So here's my hour.
That's not me. Kent's stream just decided to go meh. I guess, someone in Kent's audience must have started up his weekly download of the greatest animal videos of all time, if you know what I mean, so that Kent has something to watch when he gets done with the stream.
When you can't tell me when it was lit unless you make some assumptions. How tall was it to start with? I don't know. Was it 8 inches tall or 2 miles tall? And has it always burned?
Well, let's see, Kent. I know you don't understand that there are limits with physics, but a 2-mile tall candle, as depicted in that image, wouldn't work. Would have collapsed. Now, something you can do is find, let's say, just measure the taper of it and figure out, one, a maximum height that it could be, because if it's tapered, the two points you're measuring from, one side versus the other, the lines would have to intersect because it is a triangle. It is a very acute angle, so it can only be so tall. But additionally, we know that candles are generally made with, to not be just a straight needle. They will have, design to them, shall we say. So you could find a reasonable point and judge that maybe it was that high. That would seem sensible. This is ignoring, finding a box, finding additional candles, etc., because your analogy here doesn't really work because you're dealing with a tangible object that it's trivial to find additional information of. It might not be around, so maybe this information isn't available, but one can still extrapolate other stuff. Either way, this is also something that I don't think anyone would spend that much time on, so it kind of misses its own point. And I know it's just an analogy, but it's a weak one.
burned at the same rate. Same problems with carbon dating. You find a fossil in the dirt, the amount of C14
has the candle burned at the same rate. I mean, not to any changes in burn rate wouldn't really matter. It would kind of balance out in the long run, Kent. It's kind of how this stuff works. It's kind of how candles are designed. Kind of burn consistently, provide the same amount of light. Kind of works. If it was a flickering, fluttery mess, it'd be a pretty shitty candle. If this was an edited video, I'd put in the Simpsons joke, what a crappy candle. Oh man, this dude, I've crossed my limit with Hovind, but you know my rule, I have to finish the video, so we're going to keep going.
can be measured, and the rate of decay can be determined. End of story. How much was in it when it died? You have no idea. Nobody does. Has it always decayed at the same rate? If the Earth had a layer of ice above the atmosphere, like the Bible teaches water above the firmament, watch my video number 2, why did they live to be 900? There used to be a crystal canopy around the Earth to protect it.
You don't know that, Kent. Did you see it? Were you there?
Many other ancient religions have taught that there used to be something above the air. That's why they lived to be so long.
So those other religions are correct then, Kent?
There are many cultures with, not Christian at all, India, China, they have legends of a golden age. Just type in golden age. Oh yeah, man used to live.
Wow, it's almost as if people like to come up with stories about the world being a lot better than it is because it's something nice to relax to and make themselves feel better because life kind of sucks, especially if you're a primitive Bronze Age peasant working in a field, afraid the next beast coming out of the woodworks will end yours and everyone you know's life.
It could be 1,000. Well, the Bible says 900 something, but anyway. So plants and animals living before the flood under this canopy of ice would have very little, if any, C14 in their tissues because the crystal canopy would prevent the formation of C14.
Yes, and fossilization takes longer than you think it does, meaning we should find no fossils whatsoever, yet we do, because the permineralization process takes a long time. Not like you think it does, but, oh wait, you've got your hat left in, running cave water and other bullshit like that. See? It's like, that's not a fossil. That's concretions, you dumbass. Why do I subject myself to this? Let me know in the comments why I do this. Best answer wins a cookie.
So they're breathing air that does not have radioactive carbon. The Bible says the earth is the Lord. He founded it upon the seas and established it upon the floods. He laid up the depth in storehouses. He stretched out the earth above the water. The original creation had water in the crust of the earth, then a crust to stand on, maybe 10 miles, I don't know, then air to breathe, maybe 10 miles, and then water above that. Today's atmosphere is 78% nitrogen, 21% CO2, and 0.06% carbon dioxide.
You heard that, right? 78% nitrogen, 21% CO2, and then 0.6% carbon dioxide. You fucking idiot. Slow down, Kent. I know you're already slow, but damn, slow down.
And 0.0000765% radioactive carbon. What if, before the flood, the canopy of ice blocked UV light and prevented C14 from forming?
Oh, no, Kent, but I'm pretty sure something blocked blood flow to your brain while you were in the womb.
Plants or animals living then would have less in their tissues, making them date older because they're using today's ruler to measure them. I don't know how they can't see this. If the pre-flood world had a canopy overhead...
Probably because there's less than zero evidence for this magical canopy. Not only is it fundamentally impossible because of the way gravity works, the way stresses on objects that large around a planet go. And see, it's easy if the world was flat, like the Bible generally says. But you, for some reason, reject flat Earth. Which is one of the wildest things about you, that you're not a flat earther. So you're what would be a dome that could at least work structurally suddenly has to become an ice shell that doesn't work structurally because gravity.
And it would block out most of the radiation. So what if they only had 0.000095? We'd pick them up and date them and say, wow, this thing's been dead for See, it started with what we would have as our fourth decay, down to 1/2, 4th, 8th, 16th.
Fourth half-life, you bumbling idiot. That's what you're trying to say. Remind me again of what courses you taught at what grade level? Because I'm seriously questioning if you taught anyone anything ever. Oh wait, you didn't, but not in the way I'm wondering.
But that's where it started. So we're going to date it as much older than it should be. Use any radiometric dating method. You have to, potassium, argon, any of them. You have to assume you know how much was in it when it died. You have to change through time.
That's the stream messing up again. That's not my end.
You can't possibly know those things.
Let's see, know how much was in it when it died. Again, methodologies to figure out what the likely values are, well explained in documentation. Decay rate has never changed, it's not going to change. Physics doesn't work like that, and that there's been no contamination. That's why actual scientists work really hard to make sure that they don't contaminate a sample. It can happen, though. Mistakes are made. People are fallible. But any research group, any laboratory doing proper work will do their damnedest to mitigate contamination chances, because that's just how it works.
That's why these calibration curves only work for today's atmospheric concentration. The lower leg of a mammoth dated 15,000 years old. The skin was 21,000. Which one are you going to publish? Of course, that was when they first invented carbon dating. Maybe it got better. Let's see, 1963. Living.
You don't date living material. Period. You fucking idiot. Lying piece of shit. No, I wouldn't even call you a liar. I mean, you are a liar. I'm just throwing that out just because it's unrelated to this claim. This is intrinsically a deceptive thing to try to bring up, because this implies that someone sent living shells to be dated, if this even happened. And no, respectable lab would date something that's, was recently killed or is otherwise still alive, unless they were lied to about the status of it, which is what's known for creationists to have done, to send recent samples to places to get them carbon dated, knowing that there's an upper cutoff limit of about 6,000 years ago. But they're deceptive. They're liars professionally. So this is the kind of shit they do, because whatever will get the results that point towards their magic sky daddy, regardless of how underhanded they are, how much of made up bullshit they are.
They're still alive, guys, okay? They said if a carbon date supports their theories, we put it in the main text. If it doesn't entirely contradict them, we put it in a footnote. If it's out of date, we just drop it. Freshly killed seal, carbon dated 1,300 years old.
You don't carbon date freshly killed objects, especially fucking marine mammals, bro.
Huh. One part of baby mammoth frozen was 40,000 years old. Another part of the same animal was 26,000. And the wood next to it was only 9,000.
And all these mystery dates he's getting, this 4,000 to 26, this 9 to 10,000, again, I'm sure any reasonable research into the subject will explain them in detail. Because there's one thing scientists love to do, it's to go into details on everything. Sorry, the video won't play. For some reason, it thinks I want to add this to the watch later list.
Not any better. For instance, the bones of saber-toothed tiger, theorized to be 100,000 and 1 million years old, gave a carbon date of 28,000.
You don't carbon date things to millions of years.
Which one are you going to publish? The troubles of radiocarbon dating are undeniably deep and serious. Despite 35 years of technological refinement and better understanding, the underlying assumptions have been strongly challenged, and warnings are out that the radiocarbon dating may soon find itself in a crisis situation. Continuing use of the method depends on fix it as we go, allowing for contamination here, fractionation there, and calibration whenever possible. It should be no surprise that half the dates are rejected. They'll carbon date something. No, we don't like that date. Carbon date it again.
One, I don't know the source of this quote, how valid it is, or if some shit someone just made up, but do you ever think that maybe it just doesn't match other readings and that the most sensible and coherent data wins out? That a known age for a particular layer, known age samples and stuff, it's if it doesn't match, it's like something must have been wrong with the test. Like contamination that happens. The very stuff you brought up earlier, which would perfectly explain iffy dates on some of those previous measurements, failed methodologies, etc. So much going on here, and you just want to try to whittle it away into they're all just lying, this is wrong, magic sky daddy.
This is not science, folks. The wonder, surely, is that the remaining half have been accepted. I agree. No matter how useful it is, radiocarbon method is not capable of giving accurate results. Gross discrepancies. The accepted dates are actually selected dates. See, it has to match the geologic column. That's the standard, not carbon dating. Let's see. Shells from living snails, carbon dated 27,000 years old.
You don't date living things.
11 human skeletons, earliest in the Western Hemisphere, been dated by accelerator mass spectrometer. All 11 dated at 5,000 radiocarbon years or less. Huh. Maybe there was a big flood 4,500 years ago.
I love how you have an extra slide that circles the 1985 result, 40 years ago coming up, and that's, you just don't bring that up in your little speech. Somehow that's important, though.
Colorado Creek mammoths and Colorado Creek, Alaska, side by side. One was 22,000, one was 16,000. Guys, they're next to each other. They're not getting...
Hey, the date ranges are in groups of like 5,000 years. You try to get things pretty close, but again, wiggle room, contamination rates. In whatever case, meh. The other presumption, Kent, you make is that we care at all about your claims to the otherwise. 'Cause I don't. If there's aberrations and abnormalities, okay. Again, all the relevant documentation around these events probably well explains what's up, the reasons for this. If this methodology was as wrong as you say it is, nothing would ever line up. But it does, for the most part. And the other methodologies back things up. Because again, it's all a very well-nested system. The way we understand the age of the planet, age of organic samples we find, ages of fossils, etc. So little aberrations here or there, don't just throw the whole thing out. They're just oddities. And whatever flaw caused them is figured out.
Any better, are they?
But you've also got the presumption that carbon dating is the be-all, end-all when it's not. It's just brought up a lot because it does happen to go back past your 6,000 years.
Geologist at Berkeley, Carl Swisher, the most advanced techniques to date human fossils. Last spring, he was re-evaluating Homo erectus, skulls found in Java in the 1930s.
Yes, I heard him say Homo erectus. I'm not going to go back and do the slow-mo on it. I do not have the energy anymore. I just want to make it through this damn video. We're almost there.
By testing the sediment found with them. A hominid species assumed to be ancient ancestor of Homo sapien, erectus is thought to have vanished 250,000 years ago. But even though he used two different dating methods, he kept making the same startling find. The bones were 53,000 at most, and possibly no more than 27,000. Excuse me, even that's a 50% error, no, 96% error. Folks, it's guesswork.
But, wasn't it it's explained that carbon dating breaks down in the 50 to 60,000 year range. So if you're trying to date something older than that, you're not going to get proper results. And so when you do the measurement and when you compare that to what you'd expect, you're going to end up getting a value that's wrong because you're trying to measure outside of the ranges. It's like trying to measure a mile using a 2-foot ruler. The furthest you can measure is 2 foot. And I know you're going to be like, oh, well, you can just, keep on moving the ruler and keep on making points and stuff. It's like that's not how the carbon dating concept works, though. You only have that range to measure by. You can't go further. So, yeah, it's just what's going to happen. Not the best analogy, but it's what came to mind. Because I do this on the fly, and I'm still more coherent than Kent, who has slides and, supposed to have been, and he's been doing this whole ramble. I mean, he's saying the same shit he said for 30 plus years, and he still is incoherent as fuck, and I'm doing this live, and I'm ramble like a crazy person sometimes. Let's finish this.
Just, 20 years ago now, Professor Rainer Prach van Zeiten lied about the age of Neanderthal skulls and artifacts for 30 years. A university panel exposed his frauds, and he resigned in 2005. Prach had dated this skeleton at 21,000 years, but testing at Oxford showed them to be 3,300 years old.
So, people testing things discovered that someone was lying. So, science was used to find out the facts and contradict someone lying, but you're going to use that as a win on your side. Strange play. Let's see if it works out for you.
That would fit what the Bible says.
Yeah, ignoring that, they just ignoring that it was science that decided to figure it out. You accept the value when it's that, but you don't accept the values other times. That's again that magically special case. It's so cute how you just don't care that it's so obvious that people see you looking at everything and just being like, oh, I'm just going to throw this out, but I'm going to keep this because it says 6,000-year-old Earth. Hovind.
Another dating error identified for a skull found in Germany.
I'm sorry, I know I'm not very coherent at this stage. Like I said, I'm still sick, and Kent just burns every single bit of critical thinking skill I've got. By the end of any of his videos, I am just completely fried. And you'll notice this with AJ too, and other people who do long-form Hovind content. They get fried by the end, because this is so much to just deal with. His voice, the way he presents things, it is a slog. But I do it for you, the viewer.
Prach dated 27,000 years old. It belonged to an elderly man who died in 1750. That's not 27,000 years ago, is it? No. One part of a mammoth dated 29,000 years old. Another part of the same animal dated 44,000.
I think you had that a few slides back, and again, I don't give a fuck, Kent.
Let's see. In the last 2 years,
ignore the hits, but count all the misses.
an absolute date was obtained for the trinobids. It has the interesting value of 300,000 years, plus or minus 300,000 years. How do people believe this? Living penguins date 8,000 years old.
You don't carbon date living organisms.
Material from layers where dinosaurs are found carbon date at 34,000 years old.
That's beyond the scope of carbon dating's deeper time measurements. I always say higher end for both lower and higher stuff. That's the upper age limit. The furthest back you can go, that's well past it.
Russian scientists dated dinosaur bones at under 30,000 years old.
Same as before. You're trying to date something past the limits of carbon dating.
Hugh Miller, Columbus, Ohio, had 4 dinosaur bone samples carbon dated at 20,000 years old.
See above.
Samples were not identified as dinosaur.
See, that's the thing. If you had told them, hey, I've got these dinosaur samples, they would have refused to carbon date them because carbon dating doesn't work on something that old. You're not going to get a value that's a usable date. You acknowledge right there that it's deceit. Incredible.
Send a sample in, don't tell them what it is. Say, just carbon date it. Hey, if it works, it should work.
No, because, as you love to say, there are limits that you yourself explained earlier in your own shitty presentation. You're being intentionally deceptive with this. You are an asshole. You are a liar. You are a fraud. And you're a shitty human being. And in addition to all that, everything you say is fucking wrong.
You shouldn't have to tell them what it is and where you found it, should you? Here's what you consider about carbon dating.
Yes, you do. Because if you perform the incorrect test on a specimen, you're not going to get the right results. You're not going to get valuable data. I'm not going to use equipment to measure voltage to test how carbonated a soda is. I'm sure there might be a way one could extrapolate something from that if they really went into detail, sure, but it's the wrong tool for the job. Excuse me. Wrong tool for the job there, buddy. You want to do other kinds of dating methods. But since you don't tell them, the scientists or the researchers are going on the presumption that you're sending it in as an honest sample and understand that this type of testing is what is best for the sample. But, you know, creationists are experts at lying, so it's par for the course.
Dating. Samples of known age, it doesn't work. When you date a sample of unknown age, it's assumed to work. So these elements...
Except that there's plenty of dating of samples that have known ages and the known ages come up properly. You're just using the entire process incorrectly, intentionally, because forcing bad results makes your claim that it's bad look better.
Decay, and they produce helium, escapes through the atmosphere. Very little is able to escape into space. After factors are considered, the helium in the atmosphere indicates the Earth is less than 2 million years old. Why isn't there more helium up there? Anyway.
Has this process ever been explained? You ever think that maybe it's ripped off into fucking space? You know, solar winds, radiation. Fucking blast that stuff off. You know, slightest gas, slightest element. It's just going to keep on floating and escape. You know, we have a helium problem on Earth. We're running out. Hydrogen problem, too. Helium, hydrogen, all those gases. They gone, baby.
I think these guys have got it wrong. The rocks date the fossils, but the fossils date the rocks. Circularity is inherent. We have to use circular reasoning. So,
this has been explained in explicit detail. I can't remember it offhand, but the circular reasoning argument is completely broken down. It's just you're just an asshole for bringing it up, Kent, because it's wrong, like everything you say, and you know it's wrong. You've been told this. You've had it explained to you.
I stand by my ground. None of the radiometric dating methods should be trusted. They're all based
And I stand by my ground. You're a horrible human being.
on assumptions. Do you know how much was in it when it died? Do you know it's never been contaminated? You know the decay rate has remained the same? You can't know. A good lawyer in an honest court of law would destroy all the radiometric dates.
Yes, and you love bringing up all these law analogies when you've lost every court case you've ever been in. 06/45/2017. Are you ever going to be able to get those 9 years of your life back? Nope. Didn't think so.
Ever found. So, come.
Are you ever going to be able to get your family back? You're going to be able to see the grandkids? Going to be able to spend time with your son Eric? Oh, what about Joe? You ever get in contact with her? You know, have an amicable meeting where it's just, catch up the whole family? Or do you just have to spend Thanksgiving with your cult members, hanging out in bumfuck nowhere, Alabama? Because that's all you've got. You pathetic piece of shit, Kent Hovind. And I opened the video by going into a little detail on people being mad at me for being this rude to Kent, to speaking the way I do. And the thing you gotta remember is, he deserves it. From my perspective, he is a horrible human being. I think anyone who honestly looks into him will see how terrible he is. He doesn't show respect to others, so I won't show respect to him. As was said in the wonderful comment, it is morally correct to be disrespectful to Kent Hovind. And if you don't like it, off. Go on. Don't care. This thing I don't understand is people coming to my content and then having to leave comments saying they're mad about the kind of stuff I say. When it's like, okay, you had to actively go out of your way to find this. You had to search this. Or you were directed to it by Kent. So, what were you expecting? That's what I want to know. What were you actually expecting? That being said, Moron's done, but we're just going to see if he says anything else interesting in the last 5 minutes, because sometimes the best is the very last thing he does. So we're just going to let this flow a bit more.
Comments, questions? Brother, probably got the atheist stirred up here.
Not a whole lot. I got one.
No one's stirred up, Kent. No one gives a fuck about you. Again, you're a lol cow. I'm milking you for entertainment value, to produce content for other people to laugh at.
I'd have to know more what you mean by oneness Pentecostalism. I cover on my video number 7 what I think about the tongues movement. I point out that the New Testament disciples were told, these signs are going to follow you. You're going to speak with other tongues. You're going to heal the sick. You're going to raise the dead. Why don't they do that one? This one's the easiest to fake. Okay? I don't fight the Pentecostals. I preached at their churches on creation. I'm there to work on a different topic, but I think they're sincere and wrong. See, God told Moses, go tell Pharaoh, let my people go.
Yeah, I knocked it up to 1.5 speed because I don't care about this. I just want to see if he says anything reprehensible during this.
Go. Moses said, Lord, you ain't going to do that. God said, Moses, drop your stick. It'll turn to a snake. He dropped his stick, turned to a snake. Pick it up, turns back to a stick. Well, the purpose of that sign was to get Pharaoh's attention, to let the people go, to get out of Egypt. Once they got out of Egypt, the sign stopped. You don't need it anymore. When Moses went home at night, he could drop his stick and it would not turn to a snake. God said, Moses, stick your hand in your coat. When you pull it out, it'll be leprosy. Put it back, it'll be clean. Touch the water, it turns to blood. Read the signs in Exodus, okay? The signs ceased when the job was done. The New Testament church did not have a New Testament. It was being written. I think the Bible says when that which is perfect is come, that which is in part shall be done away. The purpose of those signs was for the transition period from the Old to the New Testament. Once John finished the book of Revelation and said, don't add to my word, I think it stopped. I think the Pentecostalism is they're very sincere. I wouldn't question that. I think they love the Lord. I think many are saved. But I think they're crazy with their thinking they're spiritual because they jibber-jabber and ran around, like a duck or something, whatever they do. So I don't fight them, but I wouldn't join them, okay? Next one.
This one's from TikTok here.
From TikTok, let's see. Do you believe dragons are dinosaurs that may have survived? Yes. I covered that in my video number 3. Dinosaurs always lived with man. They called them dragons or some other name, depending on their culture and language. Noah would have taken them on the ark, probably babies. And
Probably babies. Always got to bring that in there. Probably babies.
then people killed most of them after the flood. Also, we see after the flood a great drop in human lifespan. Get my chart here somewhere.
This isn't what the person asked, Kent. They didn't care about human lifespan. You already answered the question, move on. But nope, you've got to talk about your stupid chart, because you hadn't brought that up today. So you got to bring it out. Like, I paid for this lamination. I got to show everybody. See, I paid for the lamination. It was an extra $2 at Costco. Costco, I meant Kinko's. FedEx Kinko's, because, mergers and corporate buyouts and all that good shit.
Yeah, too many charts. Okay. This chart I've made use for years. The Bible says before the flood came, the people lived to be 900 years old.
This is the same chart I had in prison. You can see the bloodstains from where me and that guy got to scrapping. I shivved him good. Then sent him to the Lord before I shivved him out of existence. Hovind.
After the flood, they only lived to be 400, then 200, then 100.
And no, Kent, we can't see that because the video quality has gone to complete shit. Dumbass.
Today, hardly anybody makes it to 100. I'm going to make it or die trying. But something changed. I think that canopy of ice that used to be overhead fell down at the flood. Actually, I think it was shattered by the fountains of the deep breaking open, and that shattered canopy, super cold ice, got sucked in and dumped on the North and South Pole, which is why we have what we call an ice age, I think, at the beginning of the flood, because of the flood. And we cover all that in video number 6. That's why we find mammoths and animals frozen standing up. They froze standing up, suffocated, not drowned. I cover all that in video number 6, okay?
Suffocated, not drowned. Okay.
Support the stream with PayPal. You got to count the dots or do something, right?
Yes, sir.
Man, I can't do that, brother. Anyway, we don't charge anything. Whack an atheist. Neil, I'll debate you anytime. Okay? I think you're a very smart man, but you're wrong about evolution. It's a religion, and you fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. And you're teaching others. I think you're going to regret that one day when you stand before God.
Ah, yes, the empty threats and all that good shit.
Okay, any more questions, comments here?
That's it in here. Unless anyone's got some in the church here.
Please hit the like button and share. It does something to the algorithm. What's it do, brother?
Kent saying algorithm like he has a clue what the hell an algorithm is.
Makes us world famous or something.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so go back to, first I put my slide back up, brother. If you want to get a hold of us in any way, there's all the contact info, drdino.com, our website, 855-BIG-DINO, I'm extension 3. I can take calls all day. Be glad to help you. Thank you. We're going to strengthen your faith. Folks, the Bible is true. It's true about how the world began, and it's true about how it's going to end. You might want to get my series on, whoa, what on earth is about to happen, for heaven's sake? It's coming.
Yes, because I'm also a doomsday preacher, Hovind. Gotta predict doomsday. I'm dead. I'll know I'm right, Hovind. And if it doesn't happen, then God just changed his mind, even though he can't change his mind.
Like a freight train, probably in the next few years. Buckle up. Hang on. All right. See you tomorrow. Bye.
Fuck you, Kent. To the viewers, you're still around. Thank you for watching. Thanks for bearing with this stream. I hate when I'm not as well adept in a subject that Kent covers doing these videos because there isn't too much content I can actually add. But that's just the nature of the beast. We all specialize in particular ways, and my particular specializations are not into carbon dating, and I'm not going to spend the time doing what others have done and debunking everything that Kent says because it's all been torn apart already. So, you want to debunk, go to those guys. And I'm not saying that to be rude, I'm saying that as in, why double and triple work? At this point, it's a matter of just having a laugh. So, thanks for joining me. You're all awesome. Catch you next time.